Good afternoon. A special board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Wednesday, May 28th, 2025, beginning at 5:30 p.m. in the Dr. Ricardo Chapa Boardroom, Administration Building in the McAllen Independent School District, 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas 78501. At this meeting, there may be discussion and action by the board on the items and subjects listed as follows. Items listed on this agenda may be taken in an order other than as shown on this agenda. Item number 1, call the meeting to order. I have done so at 5:30 p.m. Item number 2, public comments. I believe we have one person signed up today for public comments. We're just going to play a short video, and then we will call you up.
Here are the public comment procedures. Number 1, individuals who wish to participate during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment shall sign up at McAllenISD.org at least 1 hour prior to the start of the scheduled meeting. Number 2, an individual's comments to the board shall not exceed 2 minutes per meeting. Number 3, the board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. Thank you.
Información a personas para comentarios públicos. Número 1. Las personas que deseen participar durante la parte de la reunión designada por comentarios públicos deberán registrarse en McAllenISD.org al menos 1 hora antes del inicio de la reunión programada. Número 2. Los comentarios de un individuo a la Junta no excederán de 2 minutos por reunión. Y por último, número 3. La Junta no tolerará la perturbación de la reunión por parte de los miembros del público asistente. Gracias.
Okay. All right. We have Mr. Greg Filato. Thank you, sir. You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Greg Filato at Memorial High School. Back again, but not necessarily about the same thing this time. I passed out to you guys something concerning school safety. I think it's probably better just to not say publicly, because safety, you know. But I do have a couple other comments from previous school board meetings, things you brought up, such as getting rid of the state plan and the high plan. I don't know how much those exactly cost, and I think most of us are ignorant of the state plan. For a long time, I thought when I saw that was the state plan, like for retired teachers, which is notorious for not being very good. So I would like to see that remain. It's like you pay more up front, but you don't pay as much if you actually use it. So I think it should maybe stay unless it's super expensive. Another thing that I heard you guys talking about was the high cost of semi-glutenides, like the Ozempics. And some people take it for weight, but there's also people that take it for diabetes and weight. And there's a lot more of them coming on the market, and the prices should go down with the competition. So that is something I just think you'd consider there. Try to keep it in without costing too much to the teachers that need that. And then you mentioned something I think yesterday about the climate survey. Towards the end, there was the comments where the teachers wrote in stuff. I would just encourage you to read those, because teachers you guys were wondering why did the school board get low marks, and there was one right after that. I forgot what it was about. But reading those comments will probably help you get some perspective from the teachers. And I guess just one last thing is, I don't want to beat a dead horse about the planning period, but please don't make it a permanent feature of the district to not have enough planning time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 3, 2025-26, 6th budget workshop. Dr. Gutierrez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and Board of Trustees. We have quite a few items to talk about in our budget workshop. We're going to talk about a proposed budget based on current law, the legislative update of House Bill 2. We have also some models for the salary increases that we're going to talk about, and some that will be under consideration. We're going to have also a slide on some new positions that we're considering for the next coming school year. We're going to talk about the health insurance increases, because that's something that we need to keep in mind since it's going to impact our budget. Stipend increases, we've already covered those, and we just want to bring the actual total cost of those stipend increases so that we can remain competitive. We have some capital improvement projects that we're going to have in our presentation, our budget summary, and also the budget tax rate timeline. We have two items there that go hand in hand, the cost for planning periods for all teachers at the high schools, and also the planning period considerations for high school. I'd like to say on those two that it was an oversight on our part that our trustee Regalado had given us an agenda item that specifically covered this and asked for that agenda item. We did not put it in the agenda item. It was an oversight on my part. However, we are going to cover it because it is part of our PowerPoint and it is part of our agenda. So we will cover it, Trustee Regalado. Then we also have House Bill 2 projected amounts. About less than an hour ago, we got some schedules on House Bill 2 on how much money we are going to get for next year. And we still need to do the breakdown of that, but we will show you the amount and where the breakdowns of that amount is going to be. But more to come at the next budget meeting on the House Bill 2. We're going to talk about a facilities needs assessment and update on that because that's ongoing, and we're still working with that facilities needs assessment, which we're preparing a report for the board very soon on that. And then we're going to look at our current debt profile and then some legislative updates. So we have quite a few items to talk about during this budget workshops, and we're almost near final to finishing this as we go into the month of June very soon, and our target date to approve this budget is on June the 24th. So for sure we're going to have one more budget workshop after that, maybe perhaps two if necessary, but one more after that, after this one, and then final approval on June the 24th. So that's a kind of a timeline we're working at for this budget for the 25-26 school year. So at this time, I'm going to turn it I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lorena Garcia and to Mr. Joel Garcia so that they can start the presentation. Go ahead.
Good evening. We're going to go ahead and start off with the proposed budget current law, and this is our first pass at this. We're using current law as that is the latest information that we have in terms of a complete summary of finance template. And Mr. Joel Garcia is here, our Chief Financial Officer, to walk us through it.
Thank you. Good evening, President Rivera, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Gutierrez, and members of the audience. The first slide, and let me see, Ms. Garcia, do you have As Ms. Garcia mentioned, the first slide shows the proposed budget using the current law. And again, as she mentioned, this is because we're still waiting on getting final numbers, different financial models for House Bill 2. As a few hours ago, we're still getting information, and we need to break that down so that we can develop a proper budget, right? But this is using current law. Some of the things you'll notice here that for local revenues, we're estimating about $96.2 million. For state revenues, about $130.2 million, and for federal revenues, about $26.7 million. Some of the things to note on this slide include that the ADA for this budget was developed with 17,685 students, and this is about a decrease of about 32 students compared to the current year budget. Another thing that this budget was to consider was that although property values did increase compared to last year, what we're seeing is based off the property values that there is compression to the Tier 1 part of our M&O, our maintenance and operations tax rate. And so we're seeing an initial decrease of about 3 cents to the Tier 1 M&O tax rate. There's also other things for consideration that we've included in this is the possible homestead exemption increase from $100,000 to $140,000 as per Senate Bill 4, and also the high volume of property tax protest. On the next slide, we'll see the general fund revenues and appropriations. And again, this is by fund. So again, this is by the different programs. So you'll see the amounts like for child nutrition, which is that first one, Fund 101 food service. And then it goes down the list for the other different departments. On the following slide, it shows it by function. And so one of the key areas to look at here, of course, that a big part of our budget is in function 11, which is instruction. It's about $124 million, 124.6. There is some work there also for security monitoring and data processing. Some of that work is for an IP speaker system that we are working, district-wide IP speaker system for, it'll integrate into the silent panic alert system that the district is putting together. On the next slide, you'll see the budget broken down by object code. And one of the key things to look at here is that our payroll costs are about 80%. And so again, a healthy budget, the payroll cost is about between 75 and 80%, so we're already on the higher end of that percentage. Something to just keep in mind as we move forward and talk about staffing. This next slide shows an update on House Bill 2. This is something that is being considered. We've seen several flyers on this already being circulated. So again, for teacher compensation, they're providing an across-the-board pay raise for teachers with at least 3 years of experience. So for teachers with 3 to 4 years, it's a $2,500 proposal, and for teachers with 5+ years, it's $5,000. On this next slide, it shows some of the teachers that we have in our system, positions that are categorized as teachers, and so we'll see that there's about 137 teachers with 3 to 4 years of experience, and about 1,230 teachers with 5+ years of experience. And so you'll see what the teacher retention allotment looks like, and what the cost of the fringes look like as well, and the total cost. Some of the things that we still need to work through is getting guidance from TEA on how they define a teacher, making sure that, you know, if it does require the PEIMS code 87, which is what we report in the fall submission, that it is properly coded. We do have other teachers that may be playing other roles like interventionists and so forth. And so we just want to ensure that as we move forward with the budget, we identify those that actually do qualify for this compensation increase. This next slide shows the salary increases for consideration. So this is broken down into the different categories. And so you'll see that there's the count of positions for each of these categories. In addition to that, you'll see the cost of a 2%, a 3%, and a 4% increase. That said, again, as I mentioned in the prior slide, that first category, teachers with less than 3 years experience, we may include some additional teachers, again, that may not qualify for that compensation. Again, if they're not coded 87 or they're not a teacher of record. So that may fluctuate the cost of this proposed salary increase, right? If there's more people that are identified as teachers that don't qualify for the House Bill 2 increase. This next slide shows the new positions, and I believe these have been presented a few times before. This includes 4 middle school bookkeepers, 1 middle school mariachi teacher, 1 coordinator for fine arts, 1 behavior specialist, and 1 marketing specialist. The total cost is $462,768.
I have a question. Are we doing questions now?
Sure.
Sure. So for the information presented on slides 10, 11, and 12, which breaks out MISD staff according to a couple different categorizations, am I to infer that these 3 slides are inclusive of every single person that is employed in McAllen ISD? Or are there other people that are currently employed that are not reflected in these various salary increases or starting salary proposals?
All positions that are in the HR system
Yep.
that are active, that got rolled over, are included in these projections.
Okay.
That said, there's changes that happen every day. People that resign, new hires, and so forth. And so.
So this is 100% accurate as of the time at which it was
At
produced?
the time that it was that we ran it, yes.
Okay.
That may have changed since then, right? Because again, new people get hired, some people retire, resign. So there may be some changes, but it shouldn't be drastically different.
But this doesn't include cafeteria, bus drivers.
It's in the auxiliary. I'm sorry. Let me move to the next slide.
535, that's it? There's only 535 total?
Correct. Correct.
Don't we have like 3,500 employees?
We're about, what is it, about 3,200, 3,200 employees, but
Yeah, we have a little bit over 3,000 employees. We do have about a little bit over 1,300 that are teachers in the prior category. Those are not included in this in this
Right, the
part,
first one
yes.
is 1,300. It seems low, but okay.
We can always verify and continue to provide that, that information, but this did come straight from our staff planning, from our HR system.
Yeah.
And the intention behind the question is just to ensure that as we're thinking about these, that we are fully inclusive of everybody that is current or projected to be on the payroll.
Correct. Now, I don't know, and I'm sorry, let me clarify. This came from our TASB pay maintenance study dated April 4th. But we will verify, we are working also with the HR system. That said, I know, Dr. Canales, I don't know if you want to maybe add a little bit, because I know there's a certain qualification for them to receive the raise. I believe they need to be employees with the district for 90 days. Is that correct?
Yeah, so anybody that's employed less than 90 days won't receive the raise for the next school year.
But what Trustee Carrion is, we looked at the payroll. I've always said, look at HR, what they have, but also look at payroll, because payroll, whoever gets a check from us, it's an employee. So we want to cross-reference that their numbers from HR to payroll match, so that we make sure that everybody's included.
And I think to answer your concern is, yes, we want to include everybody. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This next slide shows shows the information on the health insurance. I believe this was also presented at a prior workshop. And so some of the key things to take away here is that the health insurance plan had been doing excellent up until this past year, and it's seen some struggles. It could have been related to some high-cost claimants and other situations, but what's projected is a 4.8 million shortfall on the health insurance. And so one of the things that the team looked at was just comparing what the other districts' employer contribution was, and one of the things we noticed was that we were about $100 less than the average district was contributing to their, from the employer contribution to their self-funded plan. And so one of the proposals that we mentioned in the past was possibly increasing about $55 per month. And this will translate to a cost for the district of about a little bit over $2 million. There were other recommendations made as well that the consultants recommended at that workshop. And that included transitioning to a single plan offering, benefit design plan changes, GLP-1 co-insurance adjustments, and implementation of a 340B mail program.
We would probably need to have just another workshop just on the insurance. We already had one before, but we have 2 new trustees, so that way we can bring you up to speed with health insurance, but also because we have some proposals that we need to evaluate. And the direction that I got is have the board members interview who's going to be our third-party administrator, to interview them and see if they can provide us with better values than what we currently have. And maybe that can also help on the deficit if we get a good, solid third-party administrator that can give us better discounts than what we currently have. And that way we can reduce the deficit by selecting and we are at that point right now to select a new third-party administrator. And so once we get those proposals all done, we'll set up a meeting for the board to interview and select who's going to be our third-party administrator. Right now, currently, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I think there's about 4. How many have come in? How many proposals? 4 or 5 of them? There's about 4 or so. So we'll have a selection, at least that we can interview, and maybe that can help us a lot on the deficit, whoever can bring us better discounts in the health plan.
Thank you. The next slide shows the stipend increases. Again, these have also been presented at a prior workshop. And so the total estimated increase for the stipends is at $582,569.
I have a quick follow-up on this. I'll definitely go back and look at the prior workshop materials, but the question I have is there a place in those materials, or could we get it, if not, that has, let's say, like a 5-year trajectory of where stipends have been across each of these categories, so we can see kind of what the trend lines are and how we're ending up today and where we've been over, let's say, the past 5 years?
We have to put it together, but we can certainly put that together for you.
Great.
We have them in our compensation plan books, so we can certainly get the last 5 years and then create a summary for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
To Trustee Carrion's point, and underscoring our previous request, This does not show us what we had at the initial budget workshops as far as where those recommendations were on each of the stipends. And we had asked at maybe budget workshop 2 or 3 that we wanted to see a chart that had your initial recommendations and then the subsequent ones. And I highlight this because it's really important for us to be able to see what the administration's priorities are in not only in the stipends, but also as it relates to these new positions. Because, and I see on slide 12, for instance, that we have now a coordinator of fine arts, where we were previously talking about a director of fine arts. So I would really like to see some transparency in the decision-making as y'all are proposing these things, so that we can see, okay, well, they shifted from this and now they're suggesting this new option. And so again, I would like to ask that we please see that chart of the progression of the administration's decision. First budget workshop to the, whichever budget workshop it was when we first saw them, and then subsequently, and then what they are now.
Will do, we'll follow up.
To Mr. Regalado's point, on the fine arts coordinator position, yeah, I think in budget workshop 2 is assistant director at 110. Here it's 87 or so for a coordinator. That's, you know, given how important fine arts is, and I would say some of the underinvestment we have given to fine arts, for a $22,000 savings, why would we go to a coordinator versus an assistant director?
We were just taking a more conservative approach, trying to, save money and be a little bit more conservative. As was with the stipends, the initial one was the wish list that we got from the departments. And then once we sat down with the ELT and Dr. Gutierrez, we went through and then we met with the different directors and we whittled some of them back. And some of them were truly wish lists, and they were fine with the reductions. They were in agreement with the reductions that were presented on the follow-up. So that's the difference between the two workshops. But we will definitely bring back a chart with the red lines where we can show you the first request, initial request, and then this revised request. And yes, you are correct. We did revise the assistant director to a coordinator, and it was really basically just to be conservative.
Is that we started a little bit excited at the beginning of our first budget workshop because the proposal in Austin was going to be $395 more per child. So obviously we got excited about that, and we started looking at those that other fine arts, for example, instead of a coordinator to be like a director, assistant director. We looked at stipends, but then as the legislative session went on, and it's already almost like done, we went from $395 per child down to $55. So along the way, we also have to make those adjustments from our wish list to what reality is now, because now the reality is that they only gave us $55 per child instead of the $395. So when we started in budget workshop 1 and 2, it was great because we were looking at $395 more per child, and we could add those other incentives. But now the reality is it's 55, and most of the money is going to go into, which is good, the teacher salaries, and that's why that $12.6 million that we're going to see more is $12.6 million altogether, but some of that money has already been designated and allocated to different programs that we can't touch. So when we see the next budget workshop, we're going to see how the 12.6 may only be like $3 or $4 million that we can play with. Everything else is going to be designated to safety, to special education, early childhood, and that we can't touch because it's already been designated. So just want to remind that we started great with $395 per child, and now we're at 55, and everybody here can attest to that. You've been following us in all our meetings, that how the legislator came short once again for public education funding, really short, and we just have to work with what we have. My intent is to try to bring a balanced budget, so I'm trying to see how I can maintain a balance of everyone's request, and hopefully by June 24th that we can agree on a balanced budget. And there will be sacrifices, and there will be some things that we can do, but that's part of balancing a budget. And that's the way things are going to be moving forward. But we'll continue to take your input and see how we can make it work as best as we can to balance the budget by June 24th.
I do have a follow-up question, Superintendent. On the balanced budget, I do see there's a $4.5 million contribution, roughly 4.5 from the general fund. Is that sustainable if we're deficit spending or using the general fund to balance our budget? How long is that sustainable going forward?
It's going to depend on that we're trying to, if we can give the raises that we want to give, but then be able to cut in other areas so that we can have a balanced budget, we can sustain it moving forward. That's part of having a balanced budget. When we bring it in, if we bring in a deficit budget, obviously whatever that amount is going to be, look at if salaries is $3 million deficit, that's what's going to be $3 million indefinitely.
But do we have proposals for cost-cutting measures so that we are not taking from the general fund?
Well, that's what this is all about, that to continue to see where we can cut and not utilize the general fund. This is what these workshops are all about. But we already have some ideas on what we are going to do and bring them to the board. But right now we're taking notes on everything that is being presented to us, and like the stipends, we've already looked at them and we've already reviewed them as best as we can. And this is as far as we can go without adding any more to try to see if we can balance the budget with everything else that we need to take care of.
I did have one more comment. I'm sorry I missed it before, only because we're on those slides. But with regard to the new positions, the marketing specialist position, is that something that we've already approved?
No.
Okay, so we're budgeting for something that we haven't approved yet, but not for a director of fine arts again.
Correct. Well, we have the coordinator.
I think what I would like to see is, I fully understand needing to be, tightening the purse strings and being really conscientious about what we're spending on. But a marketing specialist does not have hands-on with our students, and I think that we need to prioritize our students and our educators.
Okay.
Just to be clear on the whole thing with the coordinator for the fine arts, I know we've been in conversation with Ms. Loya. So I know that her original request was to at least have either some kind of help in there. So the original request was a coordinator, and then it went to assistant director, and then back to coordinator. But in talking with her, I know we've talked, that would be, what she would need would be a coordinator to help out with the fine arts part of it. She already has a coordinator for the portion for the arts, and she would need an assistant coordinator to help out with the portion for the band portion of it.
Are you saying if she had to choose between a fine arts director and a coordinator, the preference would be a coordinator? Assistant director, excuse me.
Debbie, you here?
She's back there. Yep.
Ah.
Hey.
Hi. Good evening, Board and Superintendent. I originally did ask for a coordinator position, and then it got moved up to assistant director.
And what is, from your perspective, an assistant director versus a coordinator, which would provide you the most?
I feel that as
assistance?
an assistant director would be able to support me. I know that, athletics currently has an assistant director, and I feel like he truly needs that position. I feel like as an assistant director, they would be able to assist me and be able to stand in my position should I require that. We are hosting every single one of the marching competitions this year, and I know that that's going to be a very difficult process. In addition to that, the music side of fine arts holds a vast amount of responsibilities. However, I do just want additional help, period.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next slide shows the capital improvement projects. And so, again, one of the things that had been discussed at a prior board workshop, budget workshop, was the replacement of the turf and track at Veterans Memorial Stadium. And so we're seeing that at a cost of about $2.5 million. Of course, that'll require also working on the press boxes at the other two campuses. That way the students have a location to play the games and the sports, while the field turf is replaced at the Memorial Stadium. The total estimated cost is about $3.1 million, and that would be taken out of fund balance.
Quick clarification on that one. Am I to infer that Rowe is not on this list because the facilities there are already where they should be in terms of hosting varsity level games?
Yes, I visited Rowe actually last week. They have wonderful turf on their baseball fields, football fields. They have a press box already.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
And I have, sorry, follow-up question on that. I understand the turf and track is a safety issue, but the press boxes, we're doing a facilities assessment, potential bond in the future. Why the urgency to put that out of the fund balance now versus wait?
Did you want to first, or I can?
Well, I know that Mr. McAllen is here, but correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to utilize those fields because the stadium is going to be under construction for almost a year with the track and turf, so that they need to have those games over there in those two other campuses at Memorial and Mackay and Nicky Rowe now. And moving forward, we would have a lot of the JV freshman games there instead of the stadium, so that we can preserve our field a little longer. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. Also, the Mackay Top Field currently seats maximum 400. We have middle school games that are over 400. We have high school varsity games that are going to be over there. Mackay is going to have to play over there next year while the stadium's under construction. 400 is not going to be enough seats. We don't want to have parents in lawn chairs on the sideline. That's going to be a varsity facility. We're trying to duplicate exactly what's at Nicky Rowe. Nicky Rowe's got a great facility. They got over 1,000 seats home and away. Because of the power lines on 23rd and because of the power lines over there at Memorial, we cannot get 1,000 seats. We could if we expand sideways. So we're trying to get seating capacity over at Mackay Field. The whole gist of having that field was to duplicate what was at Rowe and Memorial so we can host all sub-varsity games. That includes middle school football, middle school soccer. You have sub-varsity soccer, and you also have varsity boys and girls soccer, plus track meets. So all of our track meets next year, we hosted probably approximately 10 track meets at the stadium. They're going to have to be moved over to the Mackay Top Field, Rowe, and Memorial also. So that's the whole gist of having equitable, having everything kind of the same, and because we hosted 3,800 UIL athletic events last year. So 3,800. So there is a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Our fields are used 6 days a week, sometimes 7. So they are being used with all the athletic events. And so we need to have that seating capacity over there at the Mackay Top Field.
I understand the need for seating. We had seating issues last year during playoffs. But on the press box, what's the issue with the press boxes? Because I attended those games, and I hear clearly, I see clearly. What's the issue with the press box?
Well, press boxes, we cannot put any sound systems or anything at the Mackay Top Field or Memorial right now. Our clock keepers are just out in the stands right now. At the Mackay Top Field, they're just over there on the sidelines, keeping the clock, keeping the time, and so forth. Also, in order to house a sound system, you need to have a big enough area to have it in there. So at Rowe, the sound system is inside of the press box. Also, those two campuses are at a disadvantage because we have a camera what's called Huddle. We could live stream all of our games over there. We could also, our coaches could use that as a scouting tool. They could also use it to film their practices and so forth. So the press box is where the Huddle camera is attached. So, but we don't have, we finally got an area for Memorial. We put it on the middle pole but we cannot put any sound system at Memorial. I know Mr. Alvarez is very frustrated when he has events over there
Yeah.
because there's no sound system.
So, much to Trustee Haddad's, we can't wait a year maybe for, we've done it this long, we did playoffs this long, can't wait a year for maybe when we float a bond, and then we've got extra money and can do it right, maybe even better.
Well, the thing is the price is gonna go up.
Prices are gonna
When-
go up
When you
every
do
year.
the press box plus the stadium seats, it's gonna be way cheaper than trying to do them separately.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd also like to suggest maybe to the board, just kind of piggybacking off of everyone else's points, but I'm wondering, I mean, we made really tough decisions a year ago with all of those projects that we wanted to fund through the ESSER funding, and it looks like we're still facing a deficit. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't pause these capital improvement projects until we continue in our conversations with the bond defeasance and see what we can incorporate. I mean, we're still having to nitpick positions here and there and talking about the planning period that we can't afford 1.5 million, and then I'm seeing this capital improvement projects that makes me think, why would this not be a priority to kind of put it on the table for a minute? This is directed towards the board.
Well,
If anyone else has any
I'll
insight.
just mention, I know the largest chunk of that is the turf. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that but it is a safety issue that we're facing. And so legal, stop me if I'm saying something wrong. But that one is the largest one of it. And as a board, and I think everybody in the community knows that it's needed too, we hear stories all the time from parents, from people that come in. And so people that come in from out of town and play at our stadium. So the $2.5 million is something that is needed for the stadium, needed for our district.
I'm in agreement with the turf and the track because, sorry, Trustee Kittleman, give me a second. I'm in agreement with the turf and the track because I've been out there, recently went out there for the dyslexia walk and run, and it's a mess. There's holes, and we just had, we cannot afford for kids, our kids, much less kids from other districts, to come in here and get hurt. So I'm not at all opposed to the turf and the track, but I think there's other capital projects there that, we do want press boxes and things of that nature, but at this point, we really need to be nitpicky, if, for lack of a better term, where we spend that money, and I think some of these things may need to wait at least another year. Maybe if we float a bond and that comes through, we could use that money for that. But at this point, I think some of these are a little more on the want. We want the press boxes. They work right now. But the turf and track, I agree. That's a safety hazard, and we have to work on that.
So is this number included in the, it's not included in the final summary?
No, we will be taking this money out of fund balance. It's not part of the budget. It will be drawn out of the fund balance, out of the savings.
So this is not part of the 4.5 that's already been suggested to be drawn out of the fund balance?
Correct.
So it would be 7.5 or 7.6 that would be drawn out of the fund balance?
Right. At this point, the way it is correct. Unless we balance the budget, then it would only be this amount that would come out of the fund balance.
That's a big drawdown of the fund balance. For capital improvement projects, I think it bothers me less because, they have I'm not sure what these lifetimes are, but you can depreciate them over time, right?
Yes.
But for operating expenses, it's concerning.
Like this would be the turf and the track. It's about a 10-year warranty. We won't touch this again until 10 years from now. Just like this track and turf have already, I think we already passed the 10-year mark, or we're at the 10-year mark, one of the two?
Yeah, we'll be on the 11th season on the turf, and the track has not been resurfaced in 20 years. Also, the marketing team is putting together sponsorship packages for the stadium. So I think we need to remember that. They are putting sponsorships for the stadium, just like the scoreboard costs around $1 million, and it was paid for 100% by sponsorship. So that money could be recouped at the end, a portion of that recouped at the end. But as far as if we need to give up something, it would be the press boxes, but we do need the McAllen top field bleachers in order to have those events over there, because we're going to have Morris playing over there, Travis playing over there, and we will also have all of our sub-varsity football and soccer games over there, including varsity boys and girls soccer. So if we did need to give something up, we could there, but just remember, I know the marketing team's putting together some sponsorship packages for the stadium and the press box, and hopefully we'll be able to recoup some of that money.
So this next slide shows the budget summary. And so I know initially it was 4.8 million. That's still the case, but we broke down with some of those deficits into the new positions and the health insurance. So again, the starting deficit is the $2,392,363. The new positions total to about $462,768. The proposed increase to the health insurance is $2,013,000. And then should the district choose to do a salary increase at 3%, that's about $3.4 million. And again, should the district decide to proceed with the stipend increases, that's an additional $582,000. At this time, the estimated, again, this is the very first run that we've done for the budget. It's about $8.9 million. That said, we are keeping track of any changes with House Bill 2 and the additional funds that may come in. The goal would be, like as Dr. Gutierrez mentioned, it was to work towards a balanced budget and chisel away as much as we can to get close to a balanced budget, because we do agree that some of these recurring costs are not sustainable on getting them from fund balance. So that is something that is understood and something that we're working towards.
And just to add on that, the starting deficit, that's at 2.3 million, the very first line item. But we know that that's with the current budget law, but with a new House Bill 2, we may be able to cut that to zero. If it's like, I think we anticipate maybe 4 million, close to 5 million. We're also looking at the proposed salary increases at 3%. Not all the 3.4 million that you see there comes out of 199. It's by different fund accounts, like cafeteria can pay their own staff. Some of the federal programs can pay their own staff, some of the state programs. And so we are going to be working into all those amounts and split it among different funds from different sources, so that 8.9 million is a worst case scenario, and we're working from that number down, and we already have some ideas on how to bring it down to each one of those salary amounts that we need to have.
Going back to the new positions, of those on the list, has the board approved any or all of them? None of them? Okay.
No.
All right.
When Trustee Regalado, when the budget comes in, like on June the 24th, what's on the budget and the board approves, that's what's going to get through.
Okay.
Yes. Nothing in there's done.
Okay.
Okay. The next slide shows the budget and tax rate timeline. So by June 14th, the district does need to publish the notice of its budget, and it's intended to have the public hearing and the budget adoption on June 24th. On June 18th, we'll be posting the proposed budget on a district website. On June 24th, we will have the public hearing to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate. That same day, we'll have a meeting to adopt the budget, and then we'll post the budget on the district website. We'll post the approved budget. We do have a deadline. This is, again, Texas Education Code, Texas Administrative Code. The deadline for the legally mandated adoption of the district budget for July 1st district is June 30th. And then the goal is to work on the tax rate adoption, have that ready to go by August 26th. I'm now going to hand it off to Dr. Canales for the next part of the presentation.
Okay, so the next part here, we talked about the planning period. So there's a couple of different scenarios that we have here. The first one here is a planning period for all teachers at the high schools. Based on data, based on looking at staffing right now that we have, first of all, I want to let you all, just to be clear, like, we know that the planning period is needed by teachers. We want to let you all know that, right? And talking with Dr. Gutierrez and with the administrative team here, we know that teachers need that part of it, right? So we're not against, I want you to know that, not against the planning. I've been at the high school. We know what they do and what they do with that planning part. But we're also looking at the budget part. We're looking at the possible deficit. We are looking at, hopefully, some more monies come in, right? If that came in, that would be really, really good to help out the entire district. But in order to give everybody back to planning, and this is a pretty good guesstimate here, you're looking at $1.15 million with fringes at an average salary between $60,000 and $65,000 per teacher, right? And that's not recouping, that's not costing, that will cost us that much money there. When I look at the whole planning period part there, right, you're looking at another additional math, English, science, social studies, and Spanish pretty much per high school. And it also depends on their staffing part of it as well, right? So, if somebody's able to hire a Spanish teacher that can do French, that could help out with numbers. If somebody's able to hire, like one of the campuses hired a French teacher that can do math, then that helps out. But it all depends on what staff is hired at the particular campus, who resigns, how we fill those positions as well. So when you're looking at all those there, you're looking at McAllen Memorial and Nicky Rowe, possibly needing about 5 teachers. Chief Early College High School, they wouldn't need any teachers at all. IB and options, possible English and a science teacher. UTRGV, they wouldn't need anybody. ING wouldn't need anybody. So you're looking at a total of about 17 teachers they would add to the budget as well. And you might ask, well, how did you come up with these kind of numbers, right? When I look at the planning period, more so at the high school, they have a larger amount of teachers in each department, right? So when you look at it by department, you're able to, I guess, spread out the classes between all those teachers. So and that's just right now on this estimate here. If we were to give back the planning, that would mean that right now we could possibly even save some, right? Like we know we could be overstaffed in a couple of different campuses and a couple of different departments. So we could save some money there by not adding the planning, but we know that the planning period, that it will help our teachers. So we're kind of like freezing that model and saying, okay, we're going to give back the planning, so that'll not cost anything. I'm going to go to the next slide here real quick. And that's for high schools with everybody planning back. When you look at the middle schools here, you're looking at all of our middle schools except for Cathy, Fossum, and Morris. Those are our campuses that right now that are either growing in staff or that have maintained the same ratio here. And when we're looking at staffing, we're also looking at the whole planning part of how many students are being added to the campus. We did a really good study on how many students are at the school. So anytime we're adding a staff member or requesting a staff member, we are looking at actual numbers, like live numbers. It's not just a guesstimate. We're looking at 3-year trends. We're also looking at live data, right? So if some numbers came in low based on the 3-year trend, but we're looking at, hey, you know what, Dr. Canales, we need another English teacher at this campus. We're looking at numbers, making sure that those numbers are coming in, and if needed, we are adding staff. But for the middle schools, to bring back the entire planning for all, you'd be adding possibly about $224,000 for everybody at the middle schools to have it, including those 3 campuses there. What we're proposing here, in order to not add any cost to the district at this time, to end up not having to add additional staff members, to keep in the staff that we currently have right now, they would do 2 things. One, the ratios right now for the high schools, I believe we staffed it at about 28-1. Middle schools are staffed at about 25-1. Your other specialty schools between 18 and 23-1 ratio. You're looking at those numbers possibly being between 28 and 30-1, depending on which class it is. Some classes fluctuate depending on what electives they go to. So some could be at 28 first period, second period could be at 17, third period could be at 28. Those numbers fluctuate based on what electives those students are taking during that time. So based on the other model that we did last year at this time, Everybody who had 4 or more EOC classes were given the second planning period, or the planning period. What we're proposing is that for right now, that we look at moving forward, that all special ed teachers who are in-class support teachers, right now, anybody who is in our self-contained unit already has that planning period. But we know that our special ed teachers here are needing that extra planning to do the art paperwork and to ensure that they could meet the students' needs as well, and also their needs as teachers. So right now at McAllen High School, they have 8 teachers, Memorial High School, 9 teachers, Rowe High School, 11. Lamar, they have half a teacher that is shared, and then at Chief Verde College, 1. So you're looking at adding an additional 28 teachers that would get their planning period. We also looked at the previous one, we had 4 EOC or more. So we said, you know what, 4 AP or more, or AP and dual, or a combination of AP, dual, or AP and EOC. So what that looks like there is you're looking at adding 11 teachers to McAllen High School, 6 to Memorial High School, 8 to Nicky Rowe High School, 4 to Lamar, none for UTRGV Collegiate, 6 for Achieve, for a total of 25 additional teachers, right? So that would be 28 special ed plus 25 AP dual. And then you also have teachers that are doing 2 or 3 or more preps, right? We know that that's a strain on teachers, right? We've heard that this year. I think as a board, you all have heard it as well.
Can I interrupt you really quick? And I'm
Yes,
sorry
ma'am.
about that. Why 11 teachers at Mac High? Because you're increasing the dual or the AP?
They do have a large number of dual AP teachers, so that could be the reason why. Or you have some that are doing the combination of, they might be doing maybe 3 UT on-ramps classes and then 2 dual classes, or they're doing, some teachers right now are doing like 6 dual classes or even 7 at that
So
time.
I've asked 1,000 times about on-ramps, UT on-ramps, and dual.
Hmm?
I mean, why aren't we just offering dual? Let's just ask ourselves that. I don't need an answer right now. Why aren't we just offering dual? It's in our backyard, whether we're doing it through UTRGV or STC. I know it's another option for kids, but I've spoken clearly about the advantages and disadvantages of the UT on-ramps. And so,
I can speak to
again,
that a
you
little
don't
bit.
have to answer that question right now, but let's look at why we're doing.
Also speak to it.
Yeah, so your teachers right now, anybody that does a dual enrollment class, you have to have a master's degree to teach that course. You know, we do have teachers that do have their master's degree in our campus or in our district, but then you have those that don't have their master's degree, so we're hiring out through STC, which is great. They do a great service for our kids as well. What UT On-Ramps provides for our students is any teacher who's teaching that course, they go to a week training at UT Austin. You can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, Doc.
Yep, you're right.
Week training at UT Austin, and they're
I
able to
fully
teach dual
understand that.
enrollment classes.
Yeah.
So it provides other opportunities for students who maybe haven't met TSI or other requirements to be enrolled in a dual enrollment class and get credit for that class. Sometimes through STC, if they're not passed their TSI, they might not be allowed to be in that class.
Well,
So,
we want them TSI ready, though.
correct.
That's the thing, right? We want to challenge our kids. Yes, we want them to leave with college credits, but we want to challenge them to be TSI ready. If they're TSI ready, they're ready to compete at a different level. If they're not TSI ready, they're more apt to drop, to struggle. I mean, just, again, you don't have to give me an answer now, but let's think about all of those, because higher ed at the K-12 level is expensive. So,
We lose out on CCMR bonus money if they are not TSI ready.
Another option, another reason also is the cost, right? UT on-ramps is not as expensive as the dual enrollment with our partners right now.
does UT on-ramp still allow kids to opt out of failing grades on their
Yes.
transcript?
Yes, they
Correct.
do.
Not fair to the other kids that
Right.
work hard, are TSI ready, and have to take the grade they get. So.
Can I was going back in my notes from, I guess it looks like August of last year, or, yeah. When we went over the post-secondary credits and the cost to the district for the STC, the on-ramps, UTRGV, AP, IB. And, yes, as Dr. De Hoyo said, the on-ramps, I have a cost of $53,000 in the cost to our district, which equaled to about over $400,000 in savings for our families that participated in that program. But I guess what would be a better representation of the cost would be not only the cost of the program, but the cost of what it costs to employ those teachers. I mean, I think that would really help us to see how many teachers we have in those programs, for it broken down from STC, on-ramps, UTRGV, AP, and IB, so that we can really compare the full cost of a program versus the benefits, et cetera. And I think that would help with this discussion, because I know people always said, oh, well, IB is so expensive, and, you know, we need to do this. And when you look at the costs, I mean, some of them are not very expensive, and some of them are very, very expensive. And that doesn't even include the cost of our salaries that we're paying. So I know that that's like a huge task. And I don't know why we were talking about this in August, but I would really love to see that breakdown of what the specific courses that those teachers are teaching, and assign them to, like, these are the AP teachers, these are the on-ramps teachers, and it may be the same teacher, right?
Correct.
The same
You'll have that
individual
duplicated.
teaching multiple, and so we can just split up that cost by 2 or by 3, however many, depending on the different programs that they teach. But I think that would definitely help.
Okay. And then when you're looking at the 3 or more preps, we kind of went over that there. The ones that have an asterisk are kind of double between the AP and the 3 preps. So you're looking at a possible adding additional 9 teachers to that. Additional teachers that would be needed would be none at this time, right? In talking to the master schedulers and the high school principals, you wouldn't need any other additional teachers right now. And then the cost of the district at this time would be $0 if we implement this plan moving forward. I know that the master schedulers have already started looking at this model already, so I know they're planning on that part as we speak right now. And then when you look at the...
I have a follow-up question on that.
Yes, sir.
Of those 62 positions listed on the prior slide, what % of total high school staff, instructional staff, teaching staff, does that 62 number represent that we would be affording the return to the planning period to?
So right there, those are all our current high school staff teachers.
We would have to look at I think it would be better if we get adding them plus what we currently have, what percentage of the total staff would have it now versus those that don't?
That's the question. Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez.
Yeah, that's what, we can get that.
Because there's some number X that currently have a conference and a planning. We would add 62 to that number to have a Y. What percentage of total instructional staff does that Y represent?
Gotcha. We can get that.
We'll get you that.
Well, we have the cost, right? The 5 million to bring back the plan period? How many teachers in the global, to bring back the plan period, how many teachers would get it back?
To get everybody back, you're looking at about high school, 147 would all need it, and the ones that have it right now are roughly, in that paper we gave, was about 30. For high school number 1, you have on there is 37, high school number 2, 53, and then high school number 4 was 44.
So, I mean, if we were to give the planning period back to all teachers, we would, 147 approximately teachers would get a planning period back.
Exactly.
But the no-cost option gives it back to 64?
Back to 60.
So roughly 80 would not get it. Is that correct?
Correct.
I wanted to just comment that I really appreciate the work that the administration did in bringing this option that you're with no cost, because it shows that we can do it. And I really appreciate that you took the time and found a way to make that happen. At the same time, it really draws a really big question mark in my head about what we actually saved, attributed to cutting that to begin with. And it's really important for us to do better when we know better. And so while I really like this option, and that some of the teachers could get it back, I really would like the board to consider bringing it back for all and budgeting for that. Because at the end of the day, what we do have an impact and a decision on is what we are budgeting for. And so while the reality is that when there's no cost, so on this slide 20, there's no cost associated, that means we don't budget for it. But if this board wanted to speak on our position of the importance of our employees and our educators' quality of life in the school day, to the extent that we can, given the lack of resources that we have, then we would be able to budget for $1,150,600 would take care of everybody. Okay. At the high school, though.
You added about 15 staff members to the high school. So right now, with this model that we have here, this doesn't mean that we wouldn't still cost save, right? So when we look at this model right here, this is a model, if we keep all the current staff that we currently have right now, then that would take care of this, right? Because we looked at some, like, if you look at a certain campuses, right, like say they need 77 sections for English to ensure that they get all their kids in classes. Well, some of the campuses right now have like 96 available sections. So that tells us that there's probably overstaffed by two teachers in that certain subject area. But in order to do this plan here, we wouldn't be doing the attrition with that teacher. We'd either be hiring the teacher back in order to make this plan happen. So if we wanted planning for all, you're going to add for sure another English, math, science, social studies, and a Spanish teacher to that mix at the high school. Maybe a CTE. It depends on how the numbers load in the CTE classes. Possibly. I don't want to guarantee that, but you could add anywhere from 15 to 17 teachers total, possibly. In the past workshop that we had, or last year, I know the difference was 28 teachers. Right, so we have a difference of 28, and that savings was, I believe it was like 1.7. I looked at the TASB survey study that recommended about the planning period, not doing the planning, and they said the cost savings would be about 1.5. So we fell right there within that range of what they were requesting or what they recommended. And then keep in mind that is a yearly, I guess a yearly savings, right? But in keeping the planning with what we have right now with teachers, and, you know, there could be some attrition still that we could cost save, possibly. This is the plan that we come up with that wouldn't cost the district anything at all.
And if the board wanted to account for all of the teachers to have their planning back at high school and middle school, we'd be looking at just under 1.4 million.
Correct.
And I'm sorry, I want to clarify. I think I misconceptualized it because I said the 147 minus the 64, but the 64 no costs are not included in the 1.4 million figure, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And you know, we can. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Gutierrez. I'll speak after you.
Okay, thank you. We can bring the planning period and see how we can now make it work where we have to make some budget cuts somewhere else moving forward, and that's fine. If we do bring it back, it's one of those that we will never be able to ever consider it again. And I'm okay with that, if everybody's okay with that. It's just that whenever we have to do budget cuts, then we would have to be looking at other areas and not bring this back anymore, because it's been here since last year that I got here, and of course last year financially we were in a bigger, you know, deficit than what it is now. And if we are going to consider the planning period, we're all fine with that. We just know that moving forward it's something that we won't bring back anymore. We just have to find other ways to cut the budget, because once we give it back, it's not about bringing it back again and trying to take it away. So it would have to be done financially. We have to look at other areas that we would have to save money. So that's I just want to say that out there, because I'm all for it if we're going to do it. But when I need to find other ways to reduce the budget, I'm going to have to look into other venues and not the planning period anymore.
And would this be something that we would have to look at yearly, and then boards in the future would have to look at it yearly about cutting that unless something drastic were to change at a state level? What I'm getting at is, obviously, we would love to bring it back. We'd also love for our funding to be where we expected it to be. In Austin, it was supposed to increase. Ideally, I think the estimates were $1,400 would account for whatever inflation's taken place since 2019. That's what it was supposed to increase to, what we were supposed to get. per difference, and we end up getting $55. So what I'm asking is, we need to plan for the future of the district in general. So yes, if we bring it back this year, then we cover it for this year. Next year, we got to look for more stuff to cut, correct?
If the need arises that we do, yes, financially, but then we're gonna have to look at other areas to cut, but because bringing back planning periods, if we do that, I'm fine with it. We just need to leave it alone and find other ways to reduce the budget. It could be consolidating.
Oh, sorry, Liz.
Sorry, I think I'm lagging a little bit, but I really appreciate what you guys said, but I think we need to shift our mindset to understand that planning is not a luxury. And I know it could have been presented as, oh, this is an extra, something that our district does, but it is an essential part of teaching. You can't be student-centered if you're not centered on planning and preparation. So the two go hand in hand. And I like what Dr. Gutierrez said about finding other ways, because it shows right now, I mean, the board is ranked very low on that survey, and I think that when we listen to our staff on their needs, which is not much, by the way, that it shows that we trust them and that we know that they can provide our students with the best type of learning that we can do, or they can do. So I'd really like to encourage that we continue to look at other cost savings measures that don't hurt our workforce. Because unfortunately, this was a decision that did negatively impact, which negatively impacts students. So I like that idea, and I think this all kind of ties into my request, which I think we'll talk about soon here, but I think even throwing it back to the lead committee and our teachers and having everyone help problem solve the situation that we're in, because we have really smart and bright staff who work for us and who have a lot of ideas for ways that we can be more efficient. But I like what you said. I'm for that. I think everybody knows that I'm for that, and making sure that all of our staff have the planning period and not just picking a certain cohort of staff moving forward, and looking at other ways that we can save. Thank you.
And on that same note, I know that when we made the decision to cut the planning period, we were obviously in a huge crunch. And we did it, and of course we come back in the fall, and then, you know, we're so grateful that you, Dr. Gutierrez, and our, you know, leads up here were able to help us to accumulate and transfer almost $30 million into the fund balance. And then again, we come back after spring break and we're told, oh, we're able to transfer another 11 million into fund balance. And so when I see that number, although I'm grateful that we're able to put that money aside, I just, in my head, kept thinking back, was it worth it? Did we make the right decision? And I know that giving back the planning period, while it is a recurring cost annually, and it is, you know, a good sum of money, we know that it's worth it, and we know that the people in this room will continue to do their jobs and find the savings where we need it. And I just don't think that that is where we need to continue to cut. So I'm grateful for the work that y'all have done to get us in the financial position that we're in now versus where we were 2 years ago when I got back on this board. But I know that y'all will continue to do the good work, and we just need to really pick through some of these other items, but know that the priority for us, or at least for me, I know, is with the teachers, because those are the ones that impact our students daily and have that, you know, if the teacher's having a bad day or exhausted, and they are mentally, physically, and especially by this point of the year, they take it out on students. And we have seen that, you know, not that they take it out on students, but that students are or can be affected. And I just think that this is something that is essential that we give back to our staff, so, and to all staff.
Okay.
I'm gonna agree there too. You know, when we first took away the planning period and we, you know, teachers started talking to us a little bit more. I mean, we had heard a lot already, but talking to us a little bit more about, you know, I have 30 more papers to grade, and, or I have, you know, 30 more lesson plan, different plans to make because everybody's different, whatever the case may be. 30 is 30. And when you've got 100 to do, and then you move on and you've got 30 more to do at the end of the day, it's exhausting. I can't imagine, you know, I have 10 things to do every day, and I get through maybe 6, and then the other 4 are left for the next day, compounding that. And so it is a lot. And I think that after we made that hard decision, I still see teachers that lost their planning period that always tell me, I wish we could get our planning period back. And they're still nice, and they're still, you know, happy to see me at the end of the day. I think that it is incumbent upon us to find a way, and I've said this since I got on this board, we need to, when we budget, let's take care of our teachers and our staff and those things that they need so they can function, and work around that. If we do that every time, we've got our teachers and our faculty and our staff and everybody covered. And then we work with everything else, and that's where we find our savings. So I also agree with the fact that if we can do this and we can continue to sustain it, we should.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you all are saying. I'm just saying for the future, what it's looking like is that the school's gonna be able to do this for the next few years, right? And staff's gonna be happy, everything's gonna be great, but we're creating a problem for the future if trends continue to go like they're doing at the state level, creating a problem for the future boards. And that's what's happened here. This planning period has been something that was discussed years ago, years before any of us were up here. And here we are talking about it again. So the decision is, are we looking for the future of the district, or are we looking about taking care of today? And so.
That's a good point, but we're looking at fixing this now and working around it, because I do think that we can find other areas where we can cut and maintain this. If you look at it, are we looking at, is it 1.5 what we're looking at? 1.5 every year. Put it aside and then we move forward. It's hard. All of these decisions are hard.
Well, with respect to the future, I respectfully disagree with Trustee Rivera because I think, and I was all for cutting the planning period and being really conservative financially. But at the end of the day, I'm wholly unpersuaded that we can attribute any dollar amount specifically to the planning period. And when we can't do that, then how do we justify making that change in the lives day in and day out of our educators?
Well, it's on slide number 69 of the budget workshop PDF, and if you break it down, proposal number 2, plan period model, 374 teachers divided by 7 sections, 53 teachers times 55,000, $2.94 million. And then you add that with the elimination of small classes, which I'm jumping ahead here. You add that with the elimination of small class, 63 sections, divided by 7 sections. 1 teacher equals 90 teachers times 55,000, 5 million. And then you go to 14 teachers, 5,000 stipend for extra sections, 70,000. That equals an approximate savings of $8 million.
At the end of the day, we have to reconcile that with slides 19, 18, and 20. And it doesn't add up. If we can do this at zero cost, that means we couldn't have possibly saved any specific dollar amount with regard to that.
Well, what we can do is this. I think that putting the planning period back is something that our teachers have been asking. And as you all know, when I got here, it was financially we were in a very bad situation. We made a recovery. We made some difficult decisions, and I want to thank the board for the support on that. I'm going to go ahead and moving forward, put the planning period, put that 1.4 deficit or that we need, and we're just going to have to find other ways to cut. The other thing that we wanted to accomplish last year, besides bringing the deficit down, was to make sure that we maintain all our staff, and we did that too. And then we wanted to give a raise, and we were also able to give a raise. So this is a different budget year. Legislatively, we're going to get some monies. So I'm going to go ahead and include all planning periods for all teachers, put it in the budget, and then we'll work from that number down to see if we can zero out that deficit, because it needs to get done, because otherwise our teachers need it. And I was at a meeting last week, and one of the teachers told me that he would rather have his planning period back than a raise, and thought that was a very strong statement by that teacher, because he says he was overwhelmed and it was a lot, and I can understand that. My wife's a teacher. My wife's a high school teacher. I can relate to that because I hear it at home. And so we'll work with that, putting it all back in, and then work from the budget with that amount, and see how we can continue cutting and reducing the budget.
I would like to thank you for that, Dr. Gutierrez. I think it's a very humble statement on your part, and I appreciate that very, very much. Let's look at our higher ed offerings and make sure that we're very purposeful in our advising with our students that are taking higher ed courses, because we have seen this, and I don't have the data in front of me, but there's data to prove that when students venture into that arena, into the higher ed while still in high school, and they start to drop courses or fail courses, it impacts their ability to secure financial aid in the future. And if we're not being purposeful in advising them correctly, we're paying for courses that they're dropping at the tail end because they don't want an F on their transcript or whatever the case may be. And so that's an expensive area. Let's be very purposeful in what kids get to do, the higher ed options, and make sure that, and I'm not talking about I'm really talking more like dual credit. It's expensive. I know that. I come from that world. It's expensive. Let's make sure that we're spending that money appropriately and making sure that those kids that are in those courses are doing well, and not just in a course for the sake of. I've always kind of been a little bit critical in hindsight of the fact that when you look at all of the high schools in our area that offer dual credit through STC, McAllen is pretty low on that page. You know, we don't offer as much as other schools. We don't have a comprehensive plan for 42 credits at each of the high schools. They take something here, something there. There's no plan, and that's expensive when you don't have a plan. So let's be purposeful there. That's a big savings, I guarantee you, if we start to really look at that. And, you know, we've got advanced academics with new leadership upcoming, so let's make sure that we're working on that really, really well.
And I just want to clarify that I do support having the planning period back. I've spoken to a lot of teachers that are out there, one specifically who stopped me after an employee or after the TIA, where the teachers received the TIA. And I'm not going to mention his name out of respect to him, but he was my teacher when I was at Memorial, and English teacher, and I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for him, and came up and he asked. So I want to thank him, and I told him that, you know, we would try and do everything that we can to get that back. I also do, well, I mentioned what I mentioned for the future of the district, for potential scenarios that can come up, right, in the future, 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Who knows? We can even, maybe 5 years from now, everything is great with the state legislature and we get a lot more money than we did now. But the way things are trending, they're trending down. And so my statements were made looking out for the future of the district. I'd like to thank Trustee Kittleman for providing a lot of data that she has, and it's been very helpful. There's some members in the audience as well who have provided a lot of data to look at. So thanks for the community, and thanks administration and the rest of the board members for working together.
So Dr. De Hoyos and Dr. Canales, tell the master schedulers to include the planning period for all teachers. Okay, so that they know.
They need to be done by June.
Okay, yeah, so that would be, now they know and they have direction what they need to do. Okay? Thank you. Go ahead, who's next? Lorena, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We still have a little bit more on some legislative updates. House Bill 2, this has been continuously changing. It seems like every couple of days something new comes up. providing a chart with some projected amounts on some new allotments that are being proposed. Now, this was last week, which was prior to some amendments that were made, but I will verbally cover some of the other allotments. So these amounts are based on the latest available model from OKC. They do provide a summary of finance model for us, and this one was on May 22nd. Even though there was an amendment on May 23rd, we still have not received their latest version of the model, so we don't have that information at this time, but we will bring it to you at the next budget workshop. Of course, the most important allotment that they are providing is the teacher retention allotment, and as Mr. Garcia mentioned in his previous presentation, this is for teacher raises. And these raises must be provided to teachers in the 25-26 school year. The district will receive a permanent allotment to maintain the one-time increase. So it is a one-time increase to the teachers in compensation. We are, as far as the MOKC model, they're estimating 6.6 million in that allotment. Special education
Is this the same teacher raise we talked about earlier?
Yes, sir, it is. It's the same one.
Is there a reason why the numbers don't match? I mean, they're just slightly off.
This is the numbers. The first slide was based on our calculations, based on our actual
And this is
staff
MOKC.
data, because the staff changes, they're getting it from PEAMS, so that was October, so it has changed since then, so that's why the numbers, and this is MOKC, yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
And the special education evaluations, that's another one that they are proposing a new allotment, and it's $1,000 for a revaluation, which is approximately $915,000. In addition to that, there's an early literacy intervention allotment, $119,400. However, most of that funding will only be able to be used for the math academies. So we don't have full discretion on using that. And I'm sorry, that was the pre-K, the early education allotment. As far as other new allotments that are not on the slide is the allotment for the basic costs. It's $106 for students and per student enrolled.
It's not on the,
Taking our enroll, no, it's not in the slide.
okay.
So I'm covering that verbally because those are the new changes that occurred after we had created the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Approximately $2 million for 19,632 students enrolled. You can use that money for transportation costs, utilities, property and casualty, and providing health insurance and other benefits. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just getting a message that they can't hear you speaking.
They
I
can
just
hear me?
wanted to check. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me move closer. So the allotment for the basic cost is money that has been proposed to be utilized on transportation, utilities, property and casualty insurance, providing health insurance and other benefits, paying TRS contributions, and paying payroll taxes, and also rehiring retirees.
I have a quick question on that one, Ms. Garcia. I know all of this is coming and moving very quickly, so thank you for your efforts here. One of the things that I have heard in and around the Capitol, and we should all take this with a grain of salt, like everything that we hear in and around the Capitol, is that the intention behind these dedicated allotments is to free up districts' ability to use the unencumbered or the undedicated funds for other purposes.
Correct.
And so is it fair for me to assume that the $915K in the special education evaluation, which is new funding, plus the roughly $2 million or so in the ABC allotment would free up the district in other sources of funding to the tune of, so far, $3 million to
Yes.
dedicate to other sources? So if we go back to the first, second, third slides, which have our proposed budget for 25-26, we now, under new law of HB2, have at least $3 million of additional play that will be backfilled by these dedicated allotments.
Yes, that is correct. For example, in special ed, we currently are unable to take indirect costs because they're always short. Their needs are much greater than the funding that they receive. So now we will be able to go back and take that as indirect costs. However, the special education enhancement to the allotment and the evaluations don't kick in until the second year of the biennium. But the other one that you mentioned, I'm sorry.
The ABC.
The ABC,
Yeah.
the ABC, absolutely.
Yeah.
We spend a ton of money on
Yeah.
utilities, just like 5 million or so on electricity alone.
Yeah. So the general principle is ferreting out from your perspective that while some of the funds in House Bill 2 are encumbered or dedicated by law, what they do is they free us up in other sources of revenue
Yes. in
from spending on those purposes.
Unrestricted fund that we could use for salaries or for
On
planning
the,
period.
on the ABC allotment, since we have a projected $2 million increase in our health insurance cost,
Mhm.
could we just basically swap that?
Yes, that would be allowable because that is one of the covered uses.
And that's what we talked right before the meeting. We were meeting at about 4:30, the business office and myself, that's where the creativity is gonna come in, where we can take those monies that were designated for like special education, for ABC, and be able to now relieve some of our general fund because those accounts will take over those expenses.
So instead of starting with a -3, I mean, we'd be at a wash.
We could be.
Right.
Yes.
We figure there's about 5 million in the new funding that we could probably utilize for unrestricted purposes.
That's right, because the numbers that I saw showed about a $12 million
12 million.
increase
Yes.
for McAllen ISD. If 7 or so of that is dedicated to teacher raises, that leaves 5
Yes,
for flex.
that's correct.
We saw the 12.6 million.
Yes. So another new allotment is the support staff retention allotment. This is $45 per ADA. For non-teacher, non-administrative, full-time and part-time positions, we figure that's about 800,000 in new money that we would receive.
And that would help offset the $3 million salary increase?
Yes, that we could use it, for example, for our auxiliary salary increases, maybe our custodians, to offset that.
Does support staff include anybody but teachers, or what's support staff in that?
It includes, well, the way they're defining it is non-administrators and non-teachers.
Okay.
So, your paraprofessionals, clerical, teacher aides as well.
Where do instructional coaches fall?
Instructional coaches, that is a gray area that we have yet to get clarification. That's a question that has been asked across the state.
Okay.
How do you define teachers? Because we pay them under the teacher scale. Okay, but in PEIMS, they're not coded 087, which is the code for teacher. So it depends on how TEA writes the rules to apply, and that has yet to happen.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look at that because we already ran into an issue with the teacher incentive allotment.
Oh,
And so we don't wanna duplicate that same issue
right.
with this new ruling. So we're gonna have to see how we get it in writing, who qualifies and who
Right.
doesn't.
Okay.
But we will look into that.
Okay. And some modifications to current allotments that are already in our summary of finances. Of course, the basic allotment, we are projecting on the $55 increase, giving us a gain of about almost $900,000, and that we can use on anything. Special education, another change that is happening to special education is the allotment they're modifying the weights and going to intensity of services. So Mo Casey is projecting about 231,000 that we would gain. Dyslexia, they're expanding the definition of who qualifies for the dyslexia allotment, and that gives us a minor gain of 12,810. Career and technology, they are looking at including JROTC classes as a CTE eligible course. So the changes bring about 140,000 in new revenue. In the early education allotment, that also is getting tweaked. It expands a smaller early education allotment for all K through 3 students. Districts that provide full-day pre-K will benefit because they'll be weighted a little bit higher than that. So our projections that we received is close to 300,000. School safety allotment is receiving a substantial increase. Now, this is somewhere where we can use those 747,000 to pay for police salaries. We are already using the safety allotment for salaries, or a portion of it is being used for salaries, so this could pick up an additional positions. Their transportation allotment.
Do law enforcement receive any stipends? And is that a
We do
consideration?
have some stipends on the books for our police officers.
Like the canines get a stipend for the
The
for the
canine
dog.
handler.
and stuff like
However, TASB is recommending this year that we embed that in their salary. But some of the other, like for example, corporal is not a position that we identify in our books. So those that are assigned that additional duty get a stipend for that.
And I'd like to also ask, in addition to what Trustee Regalado has asked for, you know, the progression of the stipends, to also include our PD as well,
Yes.
as far as the
Yes, we'll
stipends,
include that.
historical and projection.
Okay. And then finally, Tier 2 is decreasing a little bit to 215,000. And the reason for that is because some of the money from Tier 2 that was originally going to go to that increase is being shifted into the basic allotment increase. And now to provide you an update where we are on a facilities needs assessment. It's moving quite along. The green check marks that you see on there are things that we've accomplished recently. In this month, we had our second meeting with our Facilities Forecast Advisory Committee. In addition to that, last week we had a team, three separate teams, which were broken out into actually 6 teams that walked the campuses, including myself, Mr. Garcia, and Mr. Ruben Trevino. We accompanied MGT to every single campus in the district and performed 2 walkthroughs per campus. And met with the principals and to do an educational adequacy assessment questionnaire. We will be receiving a draft report from MGT this Friday, and that report is something that we can use when we schedule the walkthroughs that we will be having with the Facilities Forecast Advisory Committee. Now, what we were waiting for before scheduling those walkthroughs was for this legislature to close, so that we have a for sure on what the timeline is going to be for the bond planning purposes. Bless you. But just to update you, we are looking at the week of July 21st for community engagement. This would be for town halls and providing an online survey to the community so they could provide feedback. And then in August is where they would be submitting the final report. And this slide, we included it just as a reminder that we do still have those maintenance tax notes that if the district were to go out for a bond, that we would possibly include those as part of that amount so that we could free up some maintenance and operation funds.
How much would that save us in terms of M&O?
We pay roughly $2 million a year in our maintenance tax note. So that would
free up $2 million operating
It would be a
dollars.
significant savings, yes.
But at the cost of $37 million less, that bond money could be used to upgrade and invest in facilities, correct?
That's correct. And then just as a reminder, we are still on the lookout to see if there's any legislation that might get tagged changing removing the ability to have elections in May and only having them in November. But as of May 28, House Bill 19 stalled in the House Ways and Means Committee, and it did not advance in the session. There was another bill that we were tracking, Senate Bill, I believe it was 2109, if I'm correct.
Was it 1209?
1209.
I think it was 1209, yeah.
1209, I'm
1209.
1209, you are correct. And that one actually died yesterday. So right now, there isn't any that are addressing that. So we're on target, hopefully, to stay that way.
So that may be that it looks more promising that we could go to May of 2026 rather than November 2025, which is better to give us more time to do this facilities assessment.
And then the reason I include Senate Bill 4, of course, the most popular part of this bill is the homestead exemption being reduced from 100,000 to 140,000. But in addition to that, if you recall, Estrada Hinojosa did present to us that they are also in the same bill are proposing a reduction in state aid with collections over the annual debt service. And that's if a district goes for a defeasance, which we are planning on doing that, essentially it would cost us our additional state aid in the INS portion of the summary of finance, which amounts to a little bit close to $1 million. So just a reminder that one, very likely that will materialize into law because it is attached to such a popular bill. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We do have the other PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yes.
So item number 4, discussion and possible action to request that administration provide the board with various scheduling scenarios and the accompanying budgetary implications for the board's consideration at future budget workshops for the 2025-26 budget, which may allow the district to implement shorter school days across elementary, middle, and high schools.
Okay. Well, we presented this yesterday, the PowerPoint. I don't think that Ms. Nino would need to go over the whole thing again, but I guess we'll open up for questions or comments by the board since you've had a chance to look at it from last night to today, unless you wanted to present, but we wanted to see what ideas, what comments you have so that we can get better direction where to proceed from here.
Yeah, I would just start because all through the conversation yesterday and through the various conversations that I've been having over the course of the past week, I get the sense that there are two separate issues that are in some cases being conflated. And I want to just make sure that I am 100% clear on the distinction between the two issues. And in my understanding, they are the teacher workday and the student instructional day. And those are two separate issues that are related, and one feeds into the other, right? Because we can't start an instructional day if teachers are not on campus and ready to go. But the governing law of instructional minutes only covers student instructional day. It does not cover teacher workday. And it was very apparent to me in the presentation yesterday that changes to the student instructional day would come at a very significant morale cost and potential real cost in terms of time, given the fact that ARDs for students on IEPs have largely been conducted for the next school year. And my interpretation of that is that we should not touch the student instructional day for the 26-27 school year. Therefore, the item that may still be up for consideration is the teacher workday with varying degrees of iteration at the middle school, high school, and elementary level. Does that match what other people understand? I just want to make sure I'm getting this right.
That is the information that was collected for so that you could have that information.
Okay.
Was a teacher workday,
Yep.
Start and end time versus, and also the student instructional day.
Right, but those are two totally separate issues, and they do not have to
That
be
is correct.
changed at the same time. One can be changed, and one likely
correct.
needs to stay the same
The
if we
only
don't want to
requirement,
cause significant disruption.
That is correct, sir. And the only requirement that's set for us as teachers in Texas on our contract is to work 187 days.
Yep.
But it also varies school district by school district. I know I've spoken to teachers in other school districts where they say that their workday is outlined in their contract.
Yep.
And in some, it's just 187 days, so that also varies.
Right. And
but
for
the
clarification.
187 days is correct for any teacher in Texas on their contract.
And so for the McAllen ISD teacher contract, there is no definition for a teacher instructional day?
No, sir. I've
Okay.
not seen that on the teacher contract. That is
Thank you for
correct.
clarifying.
Yes, sir.
It says 40 hours, a 40-hour work week.
Correct.
That's what their contract says. That's what they sign on.
It doesn't have a specific time, though. That is correct.
So, and I guess I can speak to a lot of maybe your inquiries, Trustee Carry On, but the idea was obviously we've had this planning period issue, and I believe we have a more broad issue in general with our staff workload. While the teacher workday is separate from the student workday, I think we know that they go hand in hand. Student instructional day is measured. And I know I sent the board an email about how we are well over 12 days collected with weather days. That's how far, when other districts have between, 1, 3, or 5 maybe at the max. But my thinking, and it's not something that we need to implement right away. For me, the request to put this on the agenda was just so that administration could start working on scenarios with our staff. And so, I would love to hear from other trustees about this, but I think that this whole conversation opens up a lot of important concerns that I think our district has around workload and how it's just continued to increase. And the contract is so vague that our staff signs, that it said that nothing is identified. So there are pros and cons to that, but one major con is that, at any time we can say, start the workday at 7 a.m. and here are your tutoring duties and here are your morning duties. And so that is something that we need to confront and discuss as a district, what that looks like for our staff. And personally, I would love to, allow the lead committee and whatever other committees administration thinks to really look at this and maybe even perform some type of efficiency audit, especially in secondary, with some courses that maybe we can over time slowly consolidate. Because like we all know, I don't see us just getting a lot more funding. Our enrollment is declining as much as we all want it to continue to increase, but that's the reality of the state that we're in, that maybe we can't offer all of these wonderful things that we would love to offer because we're not financially able to at this point. So I would love to just have this kind of on our agenda for the next few months or years, just to make sure that we can see, hey, what teacher workload do we have, and what about our students too? Like, what's necessary and what's maybe unnecessary? Align with our budget. Anybody else have any thoughts? And may I say one more thing about the presentation? And I know you guys did a great job. You put it together very quickly. You met with wonderful staff members. I'd like to say that when I saw the presentation, it did seem like there was an overwhelming desire to not mess with, anything. I agree that that's the best route to go. But on the flip side, I got a lot of calls from principals and staff who were so grateful that we were taking the time to look through and consider taking off some of their workload so they could have more time. Let's say the instructional day for students ends at 3 p.m. instead of 3:30. They love that idea of being able to get out at 3 to work until 4. That way they can have staff meetings, they can have vertical team meetings, they can have the tutoring if they want. They just have a lot more time. And I think moving forward with these presentations, it would be really great to see actual survey data from people who were in that. Because if you look at some of those slides, 3 out of 4 of those tables requested ending the day shorter. ending the student instructional day at 3 p.m. So, I mean, is that correct, Ms. Nino, that 3 out of 4 tables had suggested that?
On the options that they recommended, let me just go to the summary slide. That is on the instructional day ending at 3:30 for one group, 3 o'clock. Yes, 3 out of the 4 groups had a end time of 3 o'clock. That is correct.
Right, and these are all campuses who also serve special needs. I mean, I know it varies per campus. I had some principals reach out to me and say, we would love to have complete ARDS do front load in the summer. So then the school year, it's just a much bigger impact. So I think that's important to think about. But regardless of my, opinion, I love that you surveyed the teachers and the staff, and I would love to see that information, real raw survey data included in these presentations so we can see what they're thinking and how they're feeling about some of this.
I'd also just like to clarify that the start time provided to principals for next year 2 weeks ago is going to be 7:45 next year. So I know the questions that we've received in our office is why change it, and I don't think we're not hesitant to change. It's just give us time to adjust so that way that planning is taken care of ahead of time. But again, all of this was just feedback from that committee, feedback from a survey that said survey the teachers and let's show that the 7:45 option is what they want. I'm just also showing that data that about 70% of those teachers are saying we don't mind an earlier start time, as if it can end earlier, then that's great. It just takes planning. Whatever direction we go in, we're here to support our students and just make sure our staff is prepared as well.
Thank you.
And with a later start time of 7:45, are we still providing opportunities for parents to drop students off earlier?
Well, right now, the average time is 7:15, 7:20. We will not adjust that earlier.
No,
Yes,
before
I
the
would have
7:45 is what I meant.
to look at, again, schools to see, again, so there's consistency across every campus for that. We have parents lining up at 6:55, 7, just depends where they work and their professions. But to have staff on hand and make that work, it'll probably still be the same time, 7:20. Yes, sir.
And may I suggest also for students and families who arrive earlier, because I've said this before, it worked really well at one campus in our district and maybe more who do that, but students who arrive earlier, I wonder if administration or the SHAC committee could look into having some unstructured playtime outside, maybe some paraprofessionals that are, hourly employees can staff outdoor areas so students can be dropped off and they can have some time to get some extra exercise or whatever, but can we look into that?
Yes, Dr. Kittleman, we are going to develop that to see how that can be done. I know that's something that I'm getting ready to talk to principals about because there's only 2 paraprofessionals at every elementary campus. I know in just the conversation that we've had here through secondary planning, I'm getting a lot of messages saying, what about elementary? We don't have a planning. We don't have positions that were there previously. Please propose that back too. And so it's just, equity for all in what we do. But we'll look into that and then say if there is a cost associated with adding staff so that can be doable, we'll bring a proposal for that as well. How much would that cost to have additional, at the end, supervision is key, and we need to have students monitored if they're, outside or they want to stay inside. But to structure that, we definitely want to make sure there's ample supervision for students during that time.
So going on that,
Thank you.
Instead of hiring, do we not have morning duty? Isn't that, it used to be a thing, right? And
Yes.
so I'm
We
just
rotate.
curious, where it rotates through the teachers
rotate,
that have
yeah.
morning duty.
That is a part of rotating duties at every campus. But I think some of the understanding is how do you eliminate teachers off of those schedules in the morning?
Yep.
So that they can all come in at 7:45 and we have to make work with also We only have 2 clerical positions at a campus and 2
Right.
paras, so between 4 adults and maybe an assistant principal, assuming there's not an emergency happening at that time or a parent needs to speak to you, there's 6 adults for a campus of 300 to 800 kids.
Right, but I mean, I know even when my child was at Milam, like he was in the running club in the morning and always wanted to get there early, and the coaches handled that. So just to clarify, because I've been getting some text messages through this presentation, the proposal that you're going to talk to your principals is for a 7:45 start time?
So we've already informed principals 2 weeks ago at their monthly meeting that the start time is 7:45 for next year. So that's already been, they've been informed of that 2 weeks ago.
And just to clarify, that is the teacher workday, that is not the instructional start
That
time.
is the teacher workday.
Thank
The
you.
instructional time had not been a question or something to discuss. It was still 7:50 to 3:30 at that time. That came
Well,
up
and
recently.
I think it's important for parents, because when they hear
Yes.
7:45 start time, they're not thinking
Absolutely.
about a teacher workday. They're thinking about what time does my child need to be
What
at
time do I have
school.
to leave
That
the
is
house?
correct, yes, sir. So the instructional time, again, had not been something to update principals on, and that was something looked at more recently.
But one
So-
thing, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused. If you relate the information to teachers or principals 2 weeks ago, like, didn't we just have this committee meeting last week?
Right, because I was gonna say that this 4 options was put together by a group of there was representation from campuses, staff, teachers, administrators, parents, central office.
They're all there.
That came up, yes, they came up with these 4 options. They put in a lot of work, they put in a lot of time to come up with those 4 options. Nothing that we were suggesting, this was all their new options. They struck out what Ms. Nino actually presented. What I want to do is give it some validity and validate what they did, their work. And I'd like to put these 4 options to vote on. I mean, they did a lot of work already. They've already put in a lot of time, and this is what they all came up with. This is not from us, administration. This is not from anyone other than a group that was across the board, a reflection of all the elementary schools, and put those 4 options. So the right thing to do and the fair thing to do is now let them vote. It was a representation across the board from elementary schools, so that is more driven by input by everyone to see which option is the one that we are going to select based on the survey.
And to select as a whole district, not by campus, right?
All the whole district, all the
And you
elementary.
can only vote one time.
Yeah, they can only vote one time because they only have one account. Yeah, there's no voter fraud here.
Yeah.
There's no-
Only when it comes to calendars.
Now, they can vote on it and give it that their input was valuable and that one of those options is going to be the option. And I think it's the right thing to do. Since we put this committee out there, we pulled them out of class, some teachers, we had to put substitutes. We had to get a lot of people here to do this, come up with this kind of schedules. And I want to give them credit for what they did and be able to put it out there for a vote, so that way we could have a schedule that was democratically done by everyone in elementary
And fair across the board.
and fair across the board. And whichever one is the top one is what we're going to go by.
Well, I would caution maybe to include the current schedule, because we have, at least I have, received a lot of feedback from teachers that really want to keep the 7:45 start time.
Okay.
And I don't see that, these are all 7:30, it looks
Yeah,
like.
that's what the committee came up with. We can put in the one that start time that was originally planned at 7:45. That we're talking about 5 options to look at. Those 4 that this committee was representative of everyone, those 4, and then the one that we had at 7:45, and see whichever one gets the most votes is what we're gonna go by. Because at the end of the day, there's always different opinions. Some people love 7:30, some people love 7:45, some people love 3 o'clock, some 3:30. I think it's just better to put it to rest by getting a survey, vote on it, and move on,
And never also.
and adjust from
You
there.
always have like the teacher that's gonna call in late, not call in sick, but call in late, you know? And somebody's gotta take up for that slack sometimes, probably every day that happens at every campus. So, you know, it's hard, but my inbox is full as well, wanting the 7:45. Like, I was shocked at how many emails, I haven't even gone through them all, because that 7:45 is pretty popular.
Dr. Gutierrez, I would also just like to add, especially given that we continue to see declining enrollment and we can't continue to see that, can we also include our customers, like our parents and families, in these surveys so that it's actually representative of everybody in McAllen ISD?
We could.
That goes back to student start time and.
Some of those had changing times to the student start time, though, didn't they?
Yeah. They did.
Some of those options I thought had a different.
Like the instructional day, if you look at, that slide.
When do we have to, when we change the student instruction time, when do you have to do redo the ARDs? Is that the overall time, or just, even if you just change the start time?
It would just be to adjust what their schedule of services are for those students. So right now we work off of 405 minutes for those ARDs for us to ensure that our students receive their services. By reducing that, we would just need to reconvene annual ARDs for that.
For every student that
Come on up, Ms.
is
Wilson,
on
sorry.
IAP.
But I guess as long as you keep the 405 minutes, if you don't shorten it, I guess my question is, when do you have to reconvene the ARDs?
So anytime you're going to change the instructional arrangement, which currently we've gone to annual ARD for all of our students here in the district. So we're currently set at 405 instructional minutes. So anytime you're going to change the instructional arrangement for a child, you have to go back to a full committee, a 5-member committee ARD. So it's not a one-time ARD, it's the preparation for the ARD prior, and then reconvening a 5-member ARD that day of the meeting.
And what's a grand total of those that would need to be revisited in case?
Our total enrollment of special education students, so.
Which is how many?
3,800.
Oh, no.
But that's based on the 405 minutes, not the start
Let's leave
time.
it like that for this year.
It's based on the instructional, not the start time for staff. It's the students' instructional minutes.
Right, but I guess my point, if the instruction time starts at 8 a.m. instead of 7:50, but you still have 405 minutes, you don't have to do the ARD.
That is
So
correct.
it's the 405 that matters.
That is correct.
Thank you.
So then we may have to, do those options have the 400 minutes at 405 minutes, as you said?
Not all of them,
No.
sir. No.
Okay.
No, because you're shortening the instructional
Okay,
day
then-
in some cases by 30
Then,
minutes.
Yeah, student
Yeah,
instructional
that's the
day should
future.
not be on the survey,
I
in
agree
my
with that.
opinion.
It was asked for us to consider just some options. And also, Mr. Haddad, if I may respond to the 7:45, that's actually where we started again, because next year we are planning with a 7:45 start time. So these were the original options, just to start conversations, having teachers come in at whether it's 7:30, 7:45, 8, based again on scenarios that were provided. And again, all of those were scratched out and said, and that's why you see the 7:30, those were proposed by each of those committees. Again, they said we don't mind coming in earlier if that also means we can leave earlier. But the 40 minutes of lunch was also not negotiable. If they could keep the 40 minutes, there's only, there's 2 options there that they said 30 minutes if we have to, but 40 minutes is best.
So then we can look at those 4 options along with the
But those 4 options
7:45.
need to include the 405 minutes.
Yeah.
If any of
That is
those
correct.
options don't meet the 405 minute
We
mark,
won't
then
we will not
they
include them.
shouldn't even be considered.
No,
I agree with that.
We will do that. We'll put
That's
the
maybe for
ones
future
only,
years.
Yeah.
we will put those that cover the 405 minutes so that it's taken care of through the arts. And those are the ones that we would survey that include the 405 minutes, okay? So we'll do that.
May I ask, follow up to Trustee Carrion's, when you said the instructional day should not be managed, do you mean at all, or do you mean for this upcoming school year?
I would say both and. First and foremost, I think it is way too late in the game to make changes to instructional day for students, especially given the potential negative implications on our students receiving special education services and the staff members responsible for their individual education plans, which is not just the special educators, but every general education teacher that works with that student. And I think more broadly and generally, I don't know, in my view, that dictating the student instructional day is necessarily in the purview of school board governance. That feels more like management to me.
Yep. Right. And I think that when we view it as tied to the budget, which really comes from our secondary, from all of our extra programs, credits, and courses that we offer, that's why I think it's important to just take this back to certain committees and maybe perform some type of, I don't know if it would be called an efficiency. I'm not sure the right term for how we would review, enrollment in courses and kind of cutting off some of the fluff, I guess. That's where I imagine that we would see a lot of cost savings. That's the whole purpose of this conversation is, and attracting and retaining high quality teachers and making sure that they get planning time, because we've had some concerns from secondary, elementary wants to see more planning time as well. So how can we respond to some of these issues that we're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that we should be rigorous in our analysis of the proposals that come before us. So I think we're on the same page there.
So to summarize, we'll look at those options that cover the 405 minutes and let them decide on the survey and then go with that, because we do need to know very soon, so that we need to move on and plan already for the summer. So we'll put those that are the 405 minutes of instructional time, so it doesn't impact negatively the special ed, and let them vote, and then move on with the highest.
One more question, Dr. Gutierrez. I see like option 2 and 3, the teacher workday 7:30 to 3:30, which is an 8-hour workday. But if you take into account the 30-minute lunch, that's 7.5-hour workday. Are we going to run into problems? Like if that was the option, that they wouldn't meet their 40 hours?
It could be, but again, these were considerations we wanted to bring with the information given to us.
Now, just Dr. Gutierrez, this is for elementary. We're going to give options on a vote. For middle school, the committee recommended that we adhere to the current, and then possibly the following year, we do trim 15 minutes. So we'll stay with that.
Correct.
And then high school said, leave it as is, just give us the planning back. So that one with the previous.
We took care of the high school with the planning. Middle school has suggested to keep it current for next year. We can do that. The only thing we need to do is now just look at the options for the elementary to decide which one, as long as we put those options that cover the 405 minutes, and one of them needs to have the 7:45 starting time, and we'll put that one in there. Okay? So.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I have a motion by Trustee Sofia Peña to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Trustee Haddad. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned at 7:34 p.m. Good night, everyone.